Jesus gave, the one guy that got the one coin and didn't invest it and didn't bring back a return, his coin was given to the guy with 10. And at first when you look at that, it seems unfair. But the bottom line is, all rewards are stored up for the righteous. If I choose not to be a believer, if I choose not to go to heaven, whatever is in heaven, I will miss out on when I could receive it and enjoy it for eternity. It's not that God snatches it away from him, it's that I default on it. All I have to do is say yes to Jesus Christ and let him bless my life, and the reward's there waiting for me. And the reward that would have been for the unrighteous is also there waiting for me. The fellowship, if 100 people get $1,000, everybody gets 10. But if 50 people get $1,000, everybody gets 20. Just because the other 50 didn't show up to get their share of it. Okay. Then we go to 23. A poor man's field may produce abundant food, but injustice sweeps it away. This passage of 13 is dealing with our prosperity and what can happen to it, and how God treats it. How many of you feel rich? I got one, two. Many of you feel middle class.
Well, wait, it depends. I don't feel rich like money rich. I feel rich like family, loved ones. I feel rich that way, not money rich.
Yeah.
So it depends on.
Do you know that the poorest person in America is in the upper 5% of the wealth of the world? You know that there are people who spend their whole lives trying to feed their families on $50 a year. I didn't realize it near as much as I do today until I went to Mexico and built houses for poor families who were living in cardboard boxes and had 3 kids. It was cardboard boxes taped together and tied together and wired to old broken shipping skids, and that was their house. And I went down there. I remember I went down one time and we had a college girl that wanted to ride shotgun. I was driving the van, which is something you should never do in Mexico. Never drive in Mexico because they are crazy. But I got picked, and so I was driving, and I said, okay, you'll need to document and take pictures as we go out to the job site. And so she's sitting over there, and I'd given her my camera, and she hadn't taken a picture, and I said, why aren't you taking any pictures? She said, why would you take pictures of a landfill? I looked at her and I said, this is not a landfill, this is a neighborhood. These are houses you're looking at. She said, no, they're just piles of trash. So I pulled over to the side of the road, and as soon as I pulled over to the side of the road, kids started coming out to beg, to run up to the van and beg. And I mean, kids were coming out of all these piles of junk that had been left on the side of the road and whatever, and she started crying, and she said, I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home. I said, we came to build a house, you're not going home. Unless you walk back to the border. I said, we got a house to build. And she turned out, I think she came 5 more times after that. She became one of our most devoted, but she had no idea that anything like that could ever happen. And these piles of junk were filled with families who were just trying to get out of the sun. We could have built 1 million houses and we wouldn't have got half of them into the shelter. Okay? So, are we blessed or are we not blessed? Has God blessed you?
Yes.
For sure. But there is society. A poor man's field may produce abundant food, but injustice sweeps it away. Who does the rich man generally take advantage of? The poor man. Yeah. Why?
Gullible.
He's gullible,
Because the poor man will do anything because he needs.
and he's usually too poor to defend himself. You said
The poor man doesn't have anything, so he'll do anything to get something.
doesn't have anything. And then the rich man's got to come along and take what little he does have. And it always kind of puzzled me that God could run a universe on 10%, but the government needs 60. You realize that we pay over 60% of our income in taxes? Most of it hidden, but they're there. A gallon of gasoline only costs about $1.25. The rest of it's taxes. And then there's excise taxes, and there's import taxes, and there's this tax and that tax. And you start adding them up, and it runs right about 60%. I wonder if all the corruption were taken out, what it would cost to run the country. I'm guessing 10%. 10%. Any questions on it? Injustice sweeps it away. But in God's kingdom, the injustice is controlled. I've had a lot of people taking advantage of me, but I can't say that I've ever experienced a loss. God always finds a way to return it to me and to bless me and to give it back and to make it right. And the guy that broke into my house and stole my guns or stole my tools, he just ended up back on the porch drunk the next Friday and it with an empty pocket. It didn't bless him a bit. But God always saw that I got my return. My insurance company came along and gave me more than I expected. And, I got hit by a drunk driver one time. Totaled my truck, brand new 2-week-old truck, totaled it. And the insurance company, they figured, well, when this is all settled, I'm going to end up owing $1,000 on a truck I don't even have anymore. And I ended up with $1,000 more than I expected. God just has a way of working. Now, the insurance companies aren't that generous. Somebody had to step in and do something behind the scenes, and I bet they were scratching their heads after it was over thinking, why did I do that? But God has a way of working that out. He who spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is careful to discipline him. Now there's a controversial one. Do you think God means physical here? Or timeouts? I mean, both. Depends on the kid. You know, I had one daughter, I could just look at her and she'd melt. She just melt. She just kind of cower. And she knew she was in trouble. And you knew instantly that she got the message. And that's about all you had to do. I might have spanked her once. I had another daughter, I'd look at her and she'd just look back. You know, he didn't give me one of those. And it was like, okay, we'll move on to pain. Okay. What do you think about the rod? It has pretty much been legislated out of our authority to use it in this country. Has it been a positive or negative for the country?
Negative.
Negative, 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 negative.
Negative.
You don't have kids. And she says,
You can be mine.
after this mess, I'm never going to have kids. What do you think? Negative? Positive?
We're still using it. Depends on which end of it you're on.
What do you think, Ethan? What do you say?
He's the one that doesn't have kids. We have those two kids too. We can just look at this one.
Okay, now, I'm not talking about abuse. And I'm not talking about broken skin and bruises and broken bones. Okay? But at some point in time, and I think it should be gradual, I think you should give them a chance to avoid the paddle. But I remember one time when my wood shop was up and running, if some young couple in the church had a baby, I'd make them a paddle that had this verse on it. And I would give it to them for a newborn present. And I had two of them give it back. Want anything to do with it? Well, I just don't believe in abusing my children. You don't do it because you're mad, and you should never discipline a child when you're mad. But after you got your common sense back, then it's time to deal with an unruly child, because what's the result going to be if you don't deal with it?
It's going to get worse.
The justice
It's
system
going to get
will
worse.
deal with it.
The justice system will be.
No,
they won't.
They'll just enable them.
That used to be true too, and I'm not sure that's true. Society's going to go to pot. Society's going to go to pot. If you go back and you look at the public school, and I'm not against public school teachers, okay? But if you go back and look at the public school, you know when the decline began?
They're out of school.
Hmm?
Well, they took prayer out of
When
school.
we took prayer out of school, and by default took God out of school. If you take God out of school, what is your moral, what is your moral code?
There is
Is there one left?
no.
There's no moral code left. If there's no moral code left, what do you expect the school to become like? Disciplined? Well,
I taught Mackenzie differently last year. She went to public school last year for kindergarten. And everyone says that God's out of school, which they're not allowed to pray, which isn't fair. But I always told her, even though you can't pray, I tell her God is with you all the time. So even though they don't want God to come to school, God is still in school with you, because God is with you always. So they can't stop you if you want to pray before you eat. They can't stop you if you want to, whisper something to God, or if you feel, I said, that God is with you all the time.
exactly.
And that's what I've always taught my daughter.
And I read something the other day, it's a human proverb, but it said, as long as there are tests in the public school, there will be prayer. Okay?
That's
As
true.
long as there are tests in the public school, there will be prayer.
My kids were in elementary school. My husband would, we'd go for the parent-teacher conference. Steve would take a roll of duct tape and write child modification on it and give it to the teachers. I only had one teacher that just kind of looked at him like, are you serious? And I guess there's one teacher to this day still has it sitting on her desk.
Good. I remember when we had kids in school, we would always go to parent-teacher conferences, and we'd walk in room after room after room, and nobody was coming out, and nobody was waiting to go in. Do your parents show up?
No. That's still today. I mean, I go from both of mine, and they got a certain amount of time, so I'm trying to keep, go to all of them and talk to them. And you see the list of the parents that have been there, and you're number 5 maybe on the list.
Well, now they tell us that we don't need to. Like, well, I get an email from Ethan's teachers that say I don't need to meet with you.
Yeah.
I get an email from all of Austin's that say please come, but but they do. I mean,
Yeah.
most of the teachers say we don't need you to come in.
Well, in
Yeah.
elementary school, the teacher has like 25 kids.
Right,
So they can
right.
meet with all of them, but, when you're in the junior high and high school, you have 150 or
Right,
more.
right.
So you can't meet with all of them, so you
Right,
pick out
you have to find the ones that.
But
yeah.
of those, I think I had 3 last year. It's sad.
My oldest daughter, straight A student from day one, and she gets into high school and she takes French and she gets a B+. And so parent-teacher came along, and I showed up. Nobody was there but my wife and I. And she looked at me, the French teacher looked at me like, what are you doing here? And I said, I said, we came to discuss her report card. She got a great report card. I said, well, she got a B+, and that's the first B+ she's ever gotten in her life. So I just wondered how we could help her. Is she having trouble with pronunciation? Is she having trouble with... Well, no, she's not having trouble with anything. And she starts crying. She started crying. And it got all over the school that I made...
Mrs. Walls.
Yeah, I made Mrs. Walls cry. It got all over the school. I don't think I could have sent the biggest moron in the family to that school if they'd have got straight A's, because they did not want me to show up again. It's tragic. They don't want us there.
Now I'm looking back wondering if Heather ever had to do anything in French.
And they're just
picturing
kind
her
of
eating your
along.
crackers.
Of course, she went to college and got straight A's too, so she wasn't dumb. But, after I made Mrs. Walls cry, it was a shoo-in, buddy. The Bennett kids were going to get straight A's. They got straight A's in gym, and my oldest daughter was duck-footed and couldn't walk across the street. There is no way that kid got an A in gym. But they weren't going to give her a B. And there's something wrong with that picture. Because we don't have the bar anymore, we don't expect discipline out of them, and so they do what they want to do. And that's our fault. I remember when I was a kid, there was a little farm schoolhouse in every township, and now this is a long, long time ago. And the farmers would farm that 40 acres that was given to the school, and that money ran the school. And every farmer in the area chipped in and planted and harvested, took it to the granary and turned the money over to the school. And they donated their time, they donated their gasoline. And when there was a school board meeting, 50 people showed up. I showed up to a school board meeting, and these are the scariest looking 5 men I ever saw in my life, because nobody'd ever done it before. But then we turned it over to the government, and now we've got what we bought. We didn't want to farm the land anymore. We didn't want to, but in the time we didn't want to donate to gasoline, and we turned it over to the government, and now it's totally out of our control. And I don't think we gained anything by doing it. If we're not going to be involved, we can't complain about the result. It's hard to complain about abortion. 60 million abortions now in this country. And it's hard to complain about it when nobody opposed it when it first came up. That old saying, if you don't vote, don't complain about the government. If you're not going to participate, if we're not going to participate and take a moral stand on anything, we can't complain about immorality. We can't. It's our fault. Because what does the Bible say? The Bible says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear their prayers and I will heal their land. If this country goes to pot, it's because the Christians became lukewarm and refused to take a stand, because God promised if we would take a stand, He'd honor it. It's not the drunks' fault if this country goes down. It's the Christians' fault. Because we've got the power. We've got the Father who's a king. We've got the power of the throne backing us up. We're the ambassadors of Christ, the King who won. And we just let it slip away. Either by apathy or because we didn't want to look like Jesus fanatics, whatever, we let it go. It's our fault. 25.
A poor man's field may produce abundant food, but injustice sweeps it away. Am I the right one?
I think that's 23.
20. Oh, I'm sorry.
5.
The it looked like a 3. I'm sorry, I need no context. Okay, that's my excuse. The righteous eat to their heart's content, but the stomach of the wicked goes hungry.
How's that work? If I'm a righteous person, if I'm a believer, and I consider the week ahead and my finances, what's going to be my top priority?
Food. Food.
Food. What else?
Ask the question again, I'm sorry.
Hmm?
We asked the question again, I was trying to read.
If I'm a believer and I'm looking forward at the week to come, how am I going to handle my money? I got one vote for food.
First goes to God. First.
However God wants you to.
Dig it?
However God wants you to.
Yeah. Whatever God dictates. And that's going to be first God, second family, third others. My family's going to be a high priority. It's going to be right at the top. Now, if I'm a wicked person, what's going to be my priority when I get my paycheck on Friday night?
Self.
Self. Probably gonna stop by the bar, maybe make a payment on my bass boat. The kids need shoes, but I don't want them to repossess my bass boat. What?
The devil.
Huh?
You said the devil. Is
The
your
devil?
next priority.
Yeah. The believer is going to go with Christ's set of priorities, and needs are going to come first. The unbeliever is going to go with the devil's agenda, and self is going to come first. And I'm going to take care of me first. And a lot of paychecks end up staying at the bar on Friday night, and the kids do without. And that's basically what this is saying. The righteous eat to their heart's content, because what is the biggest need of my family on a physical level for the upcoming week? Food. And if I put that first, if I make that a top priority, my kids are going to get fed. My bass boat may not materialize in the driveway. My new fly rod might have to stay at Cabela's for another year. I may not get my new double barrel shotgun, but my kids will get fed. That'll be my top priority. And there will be shoes on their feet. And we might not live in the fanciest house in the world or drive the newest car, but they'll get to church. Amen? Okay. But the wicked, well, a lot of times the wicked goes hungry because the bar ends up with the paycheck. Or the casino, or the, well, there's a lot of things. 14:1.
The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down.
All right, the wise woman builds her house. Okay, the word house here is the English translation of it. If you go back to the ancient Hebrew, it's not talking about a structure, it's talking about a home. Okay? Now you look at it and you say house and you think 2x4s and roofing and siding and windows. Okay? This is not talking about a structure as much as it's talking about a home. Okay? Now, thinking about it in that way, let's read it again. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands, the foolish one tears hers down. Okay. What is there about wisdom that's going to make a home stronger, and about foolishness that's going to make it weaker?
God's foundation.
Okay? What else?
Well, the mom nurtures the kids and takes care of them and helps them to grow and develop, and if she doesn't do that, it's gonna fall apart.
Why didn't it say the father here?
Because
What'd you
he's
say?
talking about wisdom. Sorry. It's out there.
Have you ever noticed on TV, on the commercials on TV, the man is always the idiot and the woman is always the brilliant one? Not quite sure how that fits. Who? How to put this without, I'm not even going to try to be politically correct. One of the greatest professions on the face of this earth is being a mother. And in my opinion, well, in my experience, there were times I worked 3 jobs so my wife could be at home with the kids. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because there is nothing like the mother. You know, when they want to go for a tricycle ride, my grandkids yell, "Poppy!" And when they want to go out and play ball, they yell, "Poppy!" And when they, you know, when they want something, they yell, "Poppy!" But when they skin their knee, they run to Grammy. But there's nothing like Grandma, and there's nothing like Mommy when they've got a skinned knee. Okay? And the vast majority of our country, the kids are being raised in single parent households or no parent households. A lot of the time they're raising themselves and mom and dad's not around. And it will be the downfall of this society. The only society on the face of this earth that has lasted more than 200 years has been the Chinese society or the Japanese society, the Oriental societies, and that is because they honor the family and they will honor the aged above all things. Those are the top priorities in the village. When the old people become too old to work, then they become the teachers in the schools because of their wisdom. We put ours in nursing homes. The family is the top priority in the Bible. When God refers to his relationship with us, it's either a marriage relationship or it's a family relationship, and he's the father and we're the children. It also talks about us being the bride of Christ or the marital relationship. And in the American society, we have pretty much trashed both of those. And look what we got for it.
I have to speak for Mom, sorry. I grew up in the era of, you know, when women are equal, women can do anything. And I did go to college. I did have a great job. I had a great family too, but it was hard for me to juggle it. But I couldn't help but notice that when I just stayed at home and became a mom, I lost a lot of respect for being just a mom, being a stay-at-home mom. I know this goes into controversial subjects, so don't want to go there. But I feel like society has really undermined a mother. I really do. And all of a sudden, once you have past 2.2 children, your IQ starts to decrease in their minds too. So when I had 6, it was like, oh, you're an idiot. But I just felt completely undermined. It is hard. It was hard for me. It was harder for me to stay home and have 6 kids than it was for me to get a career, go out there and walk out the door. I will say that, ladies. But it just seemed completely undermined. It's like, is that all you do? You're just a mom? So that's already gone too.
You're just a mom.
Yeah, just a mom.
The house of life. You're just
You know, Earlier you said that one of the, when the children are starting to not listen and not be disciplined was when they took prayer out of the schools. But actually I think it was before that. I think it was a long time ago, kids were disciplined, but moms stayed home all the time. Cooked, cleaned. All husbands, like our great-great-grandpas and grandparents, the moms would stay home, the dads would work. Well, nowadays, we can't just one person work and the other person stay home. It's really hard to afford it. No one can afford it these days. So now the woman and the man's working. So now the kids are going to daycares and places like that. Someone to babysitters, things. I think that's when it also started.
Yeah.
And you can't discipline somebody else's children when you have plus. I mean, that adds on to it. But I think that's kind of probably when it started. When it first started. I don't think anybody really noticed it back then because it wasn't such a big deal as it is now. But now that it's been a long time since the man and the woman has to work, I think that's when it actually started. Because they always had a mom to look up to. They always had a mom right there helping them with the schoolwork. They always had a mom, teaching them all day long. I think that's my opinion.
I don't want to beat up on all the women who have a job. And because as soon as my kids got into school, my wife's really crafty and she loves to work with flowers and stuff. So she started working in flower shops around, and people would use her when they had weddings and whatever. Before long, they wanted her full time. And but she always said, I have to be home when my kids get home. I'll help you out. I'll do whatever. I'll come in early. I'll do whatever I need to do to help you out. But I need to be home when my kids get home. And then when your kids get, in their teens, hopefully they've been raised to be self-sufficient. They can take care of themselves, and you don't have to be home when the kids get home. But there is nothing more detrimental to a 3-year-old who's developing a personality and all that. There's nothing more detrimental to that child, in my opinion, than that not having a parent with them as they develop. That really, I think, is hurt our society. And that is not politically correct, and I don't want to be beat up for it.
That was what I was trying to point out. That's the only reason I said was I thought, well, everything is undermined. That it feels like as a mom, it's completely undermined. Or as a parent, discipline your kid. You gotta do it at home and behind the woodshed, because don't do it at Walmart. The old proverbial, wait till we get home, it still flies.
I was at Walmart.
But we're undermined as Christian parents. I feel like we really are. That was my point. That's the only reason I added what I added, because I thought, I added that because I remember when I decided to stay home, my mom was the first one to say, are you nuts? Why would you want to do that? And I was like, well, it was laying on my heart. It was a personal decision. That's a personal decision in your life and your marriage, but I just was undermined by society.
And every situation's different, and sometimes you have to get food on the table. Sometimes you have to get food on the table. When my daughter and her husband first started out, she was making $75 an hour doing what she was doing. But she felt that her mom had always been at home, and so she felt guilty not being at home. So grandma became the nanny, and that's a good compromise if a compromise has to be made. But government day school, no.